Some people are confused about the purpose of the Tiny Boat Nation. It's not just to show our builds off so we can get a bunch of compliments online and pat ourselves on the back. It's about telling a unique story, and more so, solving problems. Big problems. Like, how do you mod one of these things? They're ultra portable and way more affordable and obtainable than your average bass boat. So rather than sell our soul to some other influencer to build another elite tin rig that nobody cares about, we chose to solve one of the biggest community problems. Take on one of these. I was actually going to do this myself, but then Chris and Ryan were like, Mike, no, you go way too out of hand and nobody wants to build the stuff you create afterwards. It's too complicated. We'll take care of it. It's all right. I'll give them a chance to work it out. So during research and development, they did some questionable things because, well, nobody's ever done this before. So some things we're just going to show you just so you don't do them. But the other things we're going to show you are awesome. Really simple, light, usable mods, a very step-by-step detailed video all throughout this way on how to install said mods, so you can get this kind of end product, which makes this boat 10 times more fishable than it is at stock. We show you how to make drain ports, install a bilge, wire the entire boat, so you have more or less a fully rigged portable fishing rig at your disposal that can just be truck bedded with no trailer. That's how we got this thing in. So stay tuned as our boys from TBN Southeast put this boat through its paces and get it going. Part of the problem-solving journey for us is to find an affordable spot lock option that converts to most basic trolling motors that fit even a kayak like this. So before this, you had to go buy a $6,000 kayak with the actual Minn Kota spot lock mod, or you had to make a bunch of mods to the front which voided your hull's warranty and caused you a whole bunch of other problems. But now you can just get a standard trolling motor like this Endura C230, put Autoboat on it, and you'll have full GPS spot lock technology to include nav heading, routes, control it by your phone via Bluetooth, mark fishing points, waypoints, and you also have ultra low gain settings for any small portable watercraft that is light, so you don't get thrown off the boat when the boat is trying to anchor or go its place. Autoboat is specifically made for small rigs like this, and we're so happy to put it on this rig as well. Alright, here it is, it's official, we own this boat. But a long time ago in Georgia at Academy, the crew and I got together to inspect Academy's, boats, and we saw one of these, and all of us unanimously agreed that there was no way ever that we would mod this boat. But this boat is single-handedly owned by probably hundreds of thousands of people. It is one of the most obtainable and affordable boats out there on the market, and if it's not treated like crap, like clearly Academy did here with this boat, like look at it, this is actually a really good pinnacle moment for us because we saw all the problems that'll happen to this boat if it is neglected and treated poorly. For one, it has no drain. That's probably its biggest fail because we saw right there on the trailer what happens with excessive weight in the boat from water sitting out in the sun. It'll warp. So, a flat surface, if you're going to trailer it on a 4x8 sheet plywood like what this boat is sitting on now, or just truck bed it. Just remember, it's a 2-piece plastic hull, not a roller-molded, thicker, like more robust hull, but even those will warp in the sun if you just neglect them. So it is what it is. Plastic boats have caveats, but they also have a lot of advantages like being ultra portable, being able to fish 2 people, and being specifically made to have outboard motors and run them the right way without a bunch of hackery and mods. It has 2 drain plugs, one for the actual bottom floor between the 2 molds, and one for just the back area, but nothing for the front and middle area, which makes this boat extremely difficult to drain unless you just tip it over. It takes up to a 6 horse, which is pretty generous considering. It's not as good as the Sundolphin Pro 120, but for $700, this boat is pretty unbeatable. So there's a few ways we can go about modding this boat. For one, it's a 2-piece hull just like the Palm Prowler or Bass Raider. You can see it's seamed all the way around the boat with rivets and likely staples underneath that like brown seam. So you could take the hull apart, but that's extremely tedious work to do all that. So the more realistic option would be just to mod it as is and find straight doable mods that would work correctly. We did think about decking the entire boat, but after a lot of fitting and rethinking about how we would even do it, it didn't seem like the best option to go forth. But that didn't stop Ryan from trying. He was really sold on trying to make a whole deck for this boat.
If we can notch this out, and if this plane of the rectangular tube is actually going to be flat.
So we could do this, but then the rest of the boat is not terribly symmetrically flat, and that causes other problems, and the kit would get too out there and a little bit more expensive. We're trying to make a simplified, affordable, cost-friendly kit for this boat, and so we just scrapped that whole idea and went towards the main problem of this boat, drainage. Although Ryan went a little too hasty Like if you see like parts of the bottom mold, like a different color plastic than the top coming through the hole, that is like your indicator that you drilled all the way through. It's a very, very thin border between the subfloor and the main floor. So I would get a depth regulator, like these drill stop sets. They're at Harbor Freight for like $5. And just put that thing to like almost an 1/8 inch depth or less, and then go ahead and make your holes. Otherwise, you're gonna have to do what Chris had to do here, which is plastic weld all these pieces. But here's a good tutorial on just how to fix one of these boats. Another good thing about these boats, if there's a puncture or a fail like this, they're extremely easy to fix. That is one of the advantages that I think is maybe overlooked about plastic boats, how easy it is to plastic weld. It's cake. So, with relative ease and quickness, Chris was able to repair a lot of holes in this boat. And during the boat's downtime before it got fixed, they had thought of a more obtainable and doable platform that would probably be a good basis for anything to build on top of: a subfloor. Actually, standing in this boat is extremely uncomfortable and it flexes. It's very just hard on the feet to step on these ridges. So we want to mold a subfloor, but to get a really good perfect mold, putting pour foam on top of plastic, similar to how you would mold a glass boat, is how they chose to make a perfect mold of each part of the subfloor. It was a pretty cool idea. Like, I wouldn't have done it that way, but that's probably a much more accurate way to do it, because look at it, it's verbatim. So let's see what they conjured from that mold, because they're able to have the ridges, so they know where exactly to cut right there on the seam to get a perfect piece that will not flare up or flex on those ridges, which are useless because they don't lead to any drains. So what they can act as is a nice prop up for these subfloor panels. We got a nice panel here in the back, one very generous panel in the middle, and some panels in the front, including a battery tray for those who don't want to do any hull modifications to the boat at all, which we do understand. A lot of people don't want to cut bench seats. A lot of people don't want to cut into plastic, so we have a kit like that. But we also have options for people who are feeling a little bit bold.
This is why it's important to still have your drain holes on the side, because there is water that's still going to be able to get up underneath.
They also noticed during R&D that this front part where we put that valve plate on is fairly easy to mod and stick a battery in, so that battery tray there can just be a flat subfloor. But you would have to mod it that way in order to get it done.
All right, so to cut this battery tray out, we gotta do a couple of things. One, we're gonna make an outline of where we're gonna cut, but we're not gonna be completely cutting this thing out. We're gonna leave a small little bit of this right here that we're later gonna heat up with a heat gun and bend it back out flat. That way we've got a little bit of extra plastic to put our flooring kit into. And we're also gonna leave this section right here. So the first thing I'm gonna do is start around this edge, and I'm just gonna use a little scrap piece of aluminum. You can use anything you want that's flat, just to kind of hold it up here and give me a starting point to make a cut line. I'm actually gonna cut a line right in here. I will cut that chunk out and remove it, and then that'll leave this flap right here that we can kind of bend over. And I'm just gonna kind of cut it along the top. Yeah, I'm gonna come over here and kind of do the same thing. Mark me a little line right there. And then over here, we're gonna do the same thing. I wanna leave this entire lip. So what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna draw a line right here so I know where to cut, and same thing over here.
Wasn't that bad?
No, it actually wasn't. I just didn't realize how close this was right here to the bottom of the hull. So you got to be really careful when you make this cut. You don't want to cut any deeper than the front plastic. Now, This plastic is extremely flexible. So I don't even think it's going to take much heat with a heat gun to get this back down. But one thing I want to do is we are going to come back in here and kind of clean this up a little bit. I want this to be as flat as possible. And the same thing right here, I'll probably clean this up with either a grinder or the sander just to get these little pieces right here flat with the top. So when we lay our new floor over the top, it will be nice and flat and not have these little ridges holding it up. So it didn't take a long time, but all I had to do was just heat that piece up and just get it to slightly bend over. It doesn't need to be a perfect 90-degree angle because the weight of the aluminum sitting on top of it is what's going to force it down. And then you're going to throw a couple of rivets into it, and that'll help bind it all together and make it nice and tight. Now on this front, we don't really have to do a whole lot. The only thing we're going to heat up is just kind of right in here in this corner so that we can get this to push down flat, just like that. And the same thing over here. We're just going to do all that. Some nice heat gun work right here and just pushing it down with a pair of pliers.
Glad we picked the coolest day this year to finally do this.
I've got some stick up right here and right here, and I want this sheet to sit nice and flush, so I'm gonna grind all those edges down. Now we take our floor piece, line it all up, sit just like that.
Bam. This is actually a lot nicer than I was anticipating it to be. I thought this was gonna be a little detrimental to the hull, but in reality it didn't do a whole lot as far as changing the structure of anything. And then now you don't have that lip right there. So if you're comfortable with cutting into the boat and taking that piece out, then we're gonna have an option for that. But if you're not, then you can always get this template with the two pieces, or you can get this piece with this piece and just set it on top of there. So you have the option to do either one. We're gonna take this piece to cover up my little R&D mess up there.
All this is just a piece of angle that we cut a bunch of slots in, and on the edges we had to cut a little bit out so that we can make this full bend. We're gonna install this right there to cover up that little hole. You won't have to do this, but since somebody decided to cut into this boat before we were completely ready, we need to cover it up so this thing looks good.
That's me.
That guy, the guy holding the camera.
So here's all your template pieces. You're gonna have the main big middle floor piece. That is for the front, basically bow step piece. You got a front cockpit and a rear cockpit. You're gonna have two different versions of the front cockpit. If you want to use the battery tray that's molded into the boat, then we will cut basically this piece out of this piece, and you're gonna have two separate pieces there. For us, in this particular kit that we're gonna demonstrate for you guys, we're gonna be using just the single piece up front. We're gonna be doing a molded battery holder delete basically on the boat and just installing this one big flat piece. Before we cut any of this out on turf, we need to take the sheets over to the boat, and we're gonna have to figure out where we need to place rivets to attach the sheeting inside the floor so nothing starts scooting around. You guys are gonna have to follow these steps because we're not gonna pre-drill the holes, mainly because we don't know if every boat is gonna be warped or shaped the same way as ours. So the first thing you're gonna need to do is stop by the dollar store and get some really cheap toothpaste. This was $1. We're gonna use it to make marks where we want the rivets to be in the boat, and then drop the sheeting down on top, pull the sheeting off, and drill our holes, and then we'll know exactly where we need to install a rivet.
For this, it'll only take one sheet of HydroTurf to do this entire boat, and you'll even have more spared over. We are using the duck camo because it has this yellow which closely mirrors the inside hull piece, so it looks really good. They two-tone accent and complement each other very well. But we've also seen black and gray Sundolphins, and there's probably even more colors because different brands make the same hull. So there is a variety of HydroTurf. You can see those pallets back there. We have tons of it in stock. So during a break, go on tbnation.net, search HydroTurf, and view the multitude of colors. There's too many for me to even talk about. You just gotta go see it for yourself. And no matter how big your boat is or what it's made of, this stuff rocks.
So the first piece that we're going to be installing is the front bow piece, okay? Your boat, don't worry about this. I screwed up and I cut into the plastic. Your boat's not going to have that. You're still going to have the straight plastic edge. Now this piece is designed so that you will have a little bit of an overhang right here. Okay. The only issue, so if you were to step here, it's going to want to kick out and move on you, even if you do have rivets in the plastic on the lip. In this flooring kit, you're going to get a 10-inch piece of 1-inch by 2-inch tube. The 1-inch height is perfect to match with the front of this plastic lip. So once you set this down, you no longer have any movement or kicking because of the height difference in the front of this plate. In order to do this though, we're going to port holes in here so that you can actually get to the bottom side to put the rivet in and still give you 3 mounting locations to put the rivet from the sheeting into this tube so that everything stays connected, sturdy, strong on the bow of this Sundolphin. That fits down in there, and just a regular rivet gun. Both of them have enough room to get to the backside to install that rivet. Okay, so the rivets that you're going to get in this kit are a special kind of rivet. These are designed for aluminum into plastic. They have a larger head on the top, and then on the back side, you're going to have little grooves in there. So what's going to happen is when you pull this rivet closed, it's going to mushroom out in a triangle shape to really give some support to the back side of this plastic.
All plastic boats are more or less guilty of never being symmetrical or even. So things like this have to be done or you'll just have problems. So Chris is showing you a pretty quick way to get measurement marks for a direct line so you can miss those actual anchoring spots and just be right into that beam with rivets and be fine. Following these quick steps will help you avoid making any unnecessary holes.
So what we're going to do is I'm going to leave the overhang because I actually kind of like it, and I'm just going to kind of level it up with my fingers to make sure there's the same amount of overhang on each side.
Now for the old toothpaste trick. Get the cheapest tube of toothpaste from the dollar store and use it as a template marker when you put your panel down so you can have your anchoring points.
So then we're just going to take our piece of aluminum and we are going to very gently lay this in place and try not to move it side to side once it's in. Give this one little push down just to make sure we get all of the toothpaste transferred. And then without sliding this around, you're going to need to pick this straight up. So the way that I do it is I put my fingers back here in this little hole and just lift it straight up. Now you can see we have all of our holes. Well,
we're missing 2. You didn't push it down all the way on these.
Okay, well this is a good learning experience. So we'll go back and do this again with a little bit more toothpaste this time. It does smell quite delicious. This one's mint. I prefer the bubblegum flavor, but this will work.
So we took the drill bit and stuck it into the hole just to make sure that we were hitting fairly quickly. If we have a good drop, on that hole, then obviously we didn't land on that rib, but it looks like we landed on the rib for all of these.
One thing you can do is just kind of stick this in there and don't push down, just hold.
We are on the rib.
It was close, but we're on it.
Oh yeah, don't forget these. Just go get them. They're cheap. But even if you don't get these, it's a little bit harder to drill right through the bottom of the floor because the ribs are actually raised higher than the rest of the floor. So at least you got that going for you.
Now on this rivet right here and this one over here, these two front ones, there is a little bit of a gap where this mold kind of sinks down. So when you install this rivet, what you need to do is put some pressure down on that aluminum and just kind of make sure it's sitting nice and flat, and then squeeze the rivet in. That will help it contour to the bottom of the boat and not have a big gap in between. Now up here on the front, you don't need any rivets because this is actually sitting down on the front part of the mold. And remember, like I said, it's very, very thin between there on the subfloor and the actual bottom of the hull. So you don't want to drill through there and risk putting a hole in the bottom of your boat.
So the majority of the rivets in this centerpiece are going to be on the outside, which you're going to be able to eyeball, and we'll show you that in a second. But for security purposes, we are going to put two in the middle. We're just going to kind of pick two that we think will work real well. Do our toothpaste trick, and we don't have to toothpaste trick every single hole.
And just remember, these ribs kind of run in this direction right here. I'm just going to come about an inch or so in and stick one, probably do one up here in the front, one here in the middle, and one here in the back.
That expanding triangle on the end of the rivet really does grip the plastic well. But you can also get straight kayak rivets which have a smaller head for different applications.
Boats. But this hole right here that we drilled up front and this one right here, there's quite a big gap in between the bottom of this aluminum and where this rib is. So basically what this rib does is it goes down and it has a big hole right there. And there's too much of a gap between the aluminum and the plastic for the rivet to completely collapse and grab the backside of the plastic. So you got a couple of options. You can try either moving closer to the edge if you want to, but you got to remember these rivet holes, you got to remember these rivet heads are kind of big, so you don't want to go too far over to where the rivet head's hanging over, or you can go further in to where it kind of levels out. You can also try really pushing down on this if you want to, but we've got ours cut to where it sits on top of these ribs, so it's going to leave a little bit more gap than we really need. So because this thing is literally, we're just trying to hold it to the floor, we're not going to be picking the boat up by the centerpiece. We're going to leave the two outside edges without any rivets.
You honestly probably could get away with short self-tapping countersink screws right through there and just mount it all on the sides and it probably would be fine. But it's up to you. When something that you're installing in a boat like this isn't exactly structural or load bearing or part of the integral piece of the boat, hey, you have a little bit of option and play with how you're going to install it. Another option you can check out are these. These are actual rivets that are made for kayaks. They're just really hard to source and find. I found these at West Marine. And they are a regular sized rivet head, meaning if you put them closer to the edge, they won't stick over. And they have that little rubber O-ring because this is supposed to be plastic on plastic, but you can take that O-ring off so it can be aluminum and plastic underneath. And these work just as good as the other ones without the big head.
So this next step is totally optional. It's completely up to you. We're going to be installing a bilge pump back here in the rear section of this boat. Now, if you don't want to install a bilge pump, you can just lay this piece down on the floor, use the toothpaste method like we did before, and just go ahead and install this. But we're going to show you how to do a bilge pump mod just in case this is something that you want to do. These holes are really, really bad about getting water inside of them since they're a two-piece hole and they're not sealed. This is a bilge pump from our Weekend Warrior electrical safety kit. This kit has everything you need to do all the safety stuff on your boat so that you can get out on the water at night. It has the front nav light, the rear nav light, the bilge pump plumbing, and everything that you need in that kit. So this is the bilge pump, and all we're going to do is we're going to lay this down right about here. Now you notice there is a big hump right here. On the back side of this hump is where the other drain plug is that goes out the back of the boat. I want to be just kind of ahead of that. And what we're going to do is we're going to trace kind of where this is, just like this. And then what I'm going to do when I come in here with my jigsaw is I'm actually going to cut this just a little bit big. And then we're going to use this leftover piece to make us a bracket to attach the bottom of the bilge pump to this right here. We'll show you how to do that in just a minute. Now that we've got that hole cut, the next thing we're going to have to do is transfer that onto the plastic, and then we're going to have to cut that plastic out. Pump's going to mount right down there, one right there, and I'm just going to trace the outside edge of this real quick. All right, so what I'll do is I'm just going to kind of take my jigsaw and mark me a straight line here and a straight line here to kind of cut this down so that it will fit better down in that little hole. I'm just going to put one rivet in here. That's really all this thing needs. I'm going to stick it.
It's hard to tell on camera, but this is a higher point than over here. So we're aiming to kind of try to reuse the mounting locations for the strap of the battery, both up here and...
Yeah. If we can reuse those two holes and then do like one here and one here, I think we'll be good.
All the floors have been fitted and secured quite easily, so the comfort of standing securely while fishing in this boat is a big deal. But what about sitting? It's just as important. In fact, it might be one of the main reasons you got the boat to begin with. And whether it's plastic or aluminum, benches in these little John boats get old really quickly, and you wish you had something more comfortable. The Millennium seats have become quite popular in the fishing world for being extremely comfortable. If this were an aluminum boat, they'd be extremely easy to mount. But because this is plastic, we're gonna have to do a few things differently to reach the same end result.
And then of course we have the worst styrofoam in the world. I don't know why they put this crap in boats. Oh, it's so close. We're going to be using some 1 5/8" exterior screws. This is not actually what I prefer to use, but I don't have any stainless ones here, so we're just going to go with this for right now. All right, now it's time for the turf. Probably the easiest part of this whole process. Literally just seal it and stick it down.
decided that we're going to try to go ahead and add EVA foam, the HydroTurf, to the top part of this seat. So we're cutting the template out right now just on some little packing paper. Alright, as you guys can see, our templates came out really good. It was the same template for the front as it was the rear bench. So as long as you can get one of those made, it'll transfer over to the other one. Now, we still only used one sheet of duck camo HydroTurf in this entire boat, which I think is going to make this the cheapest kit ever.
Yes.
I mean, if you want an affordable option, this is what you're gonna get. So remember the seat bases we put in? They come with these little caps. Just cut the hole out, drop the cap in, and we're ready to put these Millennium seats in.
Green matches pretty well.
Would you look at that? Alright guys, so we decided to add the auto boat unit to the Sundolphin. Real quick, let's show you a little bit of what it looks like underneath here. The foam wasn't too terribly bad to get out. There really wasn't a whole lot in there. It's just one big block that we split into two, and then we're able to kind of like squeeze it out of there. But so we have the auto boat attached to the plastic that we cut. We started off with a 6 by 12 inch hole, and then we ended up making a 7.5 by 13.5 inch panel. And basically this is going to end up covering up this hole when everything's said and done. But we didn't actually cut the entire bottom. What we did was we measured the width of the auto boat and then left that much onto the plastics. After we did that, we mounted the trolling motor, and then we drilled the hole right here. This is an 1.75 inch hole. We put a grommet on there, and then all of our cables are going to be running in and out of here. So this is also going to be pretty useful for somebody that wants to put a graph up here. You're going to have the ability to run your cables all through that same hole. Then you'll also have access down here to run everything. So we got the auto boat already completely installed. It is a pretty short shaft, but I think it's going to work pretty good for this boat. So we have that mounted on here. Once that's all said and done, we're going to run it all the way to the back. Try to snake this hole.
A double hull has its downfalls, but also its strengths. For one, there was a subfloor that we could utilize for that bilge pump, and two, there are side walls we can utilize for conduits. Nav lights, LEDs, and other electronic accessories can easily be installed. And the fish tape you saw us using earlier is very easy to obtain and cheap at Harbor Freight or any hardware store for that matter. And any sort of electrical layout, whether it's advanced or simple like this one, will elevate your boating experience tremendously. I tell you, you can make any sort of boat as advanced as you want, all the compartments in the world. It's nothing without the electrical layout.
talking about.
Dude, this is so much
It's
better.
way better. I stood up in it.
You did?
I would have stood up in it and made the cat. It's way better than it was. Way more vigorous.
Now, left to right movement is still a little wobbly, but this is pretty freaking comfortable. We can just go over
Get
here
the
to these
fish out of it.
trees.
You catch fish out of the hole right there. It's so much better with plates in, it's unreal.
Oh, yeah.
Night and day difference.
I mean, I'm still a little sketched out,
Yeah,
but
it's a little sketchy, but if you fish with it a little bit,
yeah.
you'll get used to it. And if you was fishing by yourself, it'd even be better.